In Nehemiah chapter 8, the people of Jerusalem renewed the celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles. This 8-day festival held great significance for ancient Israel, and Latter-day Saints today can appreciate various ways in which it intersects with our unique scriptures and history. The Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot, is one of Israel's pilgrimage festivals, and it commemorates Israel's wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. It's also an autumn harvest festival, celebrating that year's bounty and gratitude to the Lord. The Feast of Tabernacles was celebrated by constructing temporary shelters or booths that memorialized how the ancient Israelites lived in booths or tabernacles during their wandering in the wilderness. It reminds Israel of when the Lord himself dwelt in a tabernacle because the temple had not yet been built. The autumn festivals were a time for renewing God's covenant and coronating new rulers. Some scholars have theorized that certain Book of Mormon events may have taken place during the Feast of Tabernacles. For example, after Nephi consecrated his brother Jacob as a high priest, Jacob gave a lengthy speech which touched on covenant and coronation themes similar to those celebrated during the Feast of Tabernacles. Jacob discussed creation, holy garments, the name of God, sacrifice, fasting, God's judgment, and the remembrance of God's covenant. Even the structure of Jacob's speech follows the pattern of renewing ancient covenants. The Feast of Tabernacles also shows up in the Book of Mormon several centuries later when King Benjamin coronated his son Mosiah and renewed God's covenant with the people. The Book of Mosiah includes the peculiar detail that all the people listened to this speech while they dwelt in tents, each family in their own tent, just as ancient Israelites would dwell in booths during this festival. It would seem that this occasion was also a pilgrimage event since all the families in the land gathered at the Nephite temple. King Benjamin's speech followed a standard, ancient formula for covenant making, and the occasion included the offering of sacrifices. All of these clues suggest that King Benjamin's speech in Mosiah chapters 2 through 6 likely took place during the Feast of Tabernacles. The Feast of Tabernacles also has a special place in Latter-day Saint church history. The very beginnings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can be traced back to these ancient Israelite autumn festivals. On September 21st, 1823, the angel Moroni first appeared to Joseph Smith and told him of an ancient record that was buried in a nearby hill. So when Joseph first heard Moroni tell him about the gold plates and the Book of Mormon, it coincided with that year's celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles. Future visits from Moroni would coincide with other autumn festivals such as Rosh Hashanah and the Day of Atonement. It's fitting that Moroni would visit on such an occasion as the Feast of Tabernacles. Moroni ushered in the restoration of God's covenant at a time of covenant renewal. The restoration of the Church of Jesus Christ ushered in a harvest of souls, just as the autumn festivals celebrated the annual agricultural harvest. And this time of year marked the new year on the Jewish calendar, just as Moroni's visits marked the beginning of the last dispensation. The coming forth of the Book of Mormon launched a new beginning, the dawning of a day when the heavens were opened again. Latter-day Saints clearly have a rich history with the Feast of Tabernacles, and we can increase our appreciation of the gospel of Jesus Christ by studying more about this ancient sacred feast.